Good evening. It is Thursday, April the 12th, about 10 o'clock p.m. This is Shay Gibson with Wind Alert Night Kitesurf, bringing you a weekend wind and weather forecast for the Tampa Bay area. It looks like Aaron McLaren on and Elite Watersports, they're trying to put another big air contest on, or put the date back on to have the big air contest on Sunday. The models are sort of going through the roof right now. There's a lot of agreement with some very high numbers right now. How realistic that is has yet to be explained, but I'll go over some details about it, what to expect and maybe what not to expect. So I'm not going to kill any hopes yet. Just want to make sure that we start talking about some of the factors that could lead into maybe the wind makers and maybe some wind killers as well. But it looks like it's going to be a fairly quiet weekend leading into that. Right now, things are fairly quiet over the Gulf of Mexico, just a few clouds out there. Brian Eichert and Tommy both would probably associate that with chemtrails and some mind-controlling substances that are creeping across the Gulf of Mexico to the south. But no worries. Looks like it's going to head over to Cape Coral and the Keys, so they'll be affected down there. Not you guys. You'll be safe up there in Tampa Bay. We'll go ahead and move that off the map. Let's look at the GFS model. This is from Tropical Tidbits. My friend Levi Cowan there does a bang-up job on this website. If you ever want to use it, it's great. It's free modeling, and we take a look at the factors that are going to be coming together right now. We have this big Bermuda high pressure right here that's sort of keeping an east-southeast or easterly flow cutting into Florida. Right now there's still a bit of a northerly flow from some leftover bottled up high pressure up here in the northeast Gulf of Mexico. That should sort of pan out to more of an east-southeast or even a southeast flow starting tomorrow as this high becomes a little bit more robust, and even more robust as we get into Saturday. So if we run this model forward, we see how it's sort of flattened out here. There's some troughing to the north, there's troughing to the south that tends to flatten these Bermuda highs, and we get what's called a ridge axis that is extended all the way into South Carolina in these parts. So everything down here is more modest on a southeast regime, and then above this becomes more south-southwest to southwest. So everything goes in clockwise rotation around high pressures, and this is a classic example of what would shut down winds in Florida for the summer as these blocking highs form. But we have this system coming together out west, a mid-level low that's going to be really ramping things up and drawing a lot of Gulf energy up into it. So this convergent southerly flow is going to be increasing as we get into Saturday and into Sunday. And we'll go out a little bit further in the modeling for that. As we look into Saturday afternoon, we see this cold front approach. We see the convergent winds really starting to ramp up. We have more of a south or south-southeast. I would say for Tampa Bay, in all intents and purposes, we're looking at a dead side shore here. A south-southeast wind regime heading up into this cold front as this low really starts to advance and head off towards the east-northeast. So that's going to be the maker. We have this mid-level low. We can actually see this mid-level low if we look at the upper dynamics at the 500 millibar level. This is at 18,000 feet. This is Saturday afternoon. As we go into Saturday night and into Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon, we can see this mid-level high right here along the Midwest, just east of Missouri, and then entering into the Tennessee, Kentucky areas and in towards the Ohio Valley. All of this area right here is where this convergence is going to be. So this low dips very far down. In fact, the upper level winds go way down into the Gulf. We're talking very, very high up in the atmosphere at 36,000 feet. But this is 18,000 feet, and you can see the influence here. And this is really with this high pressure, this ridge over here and this low right here, all of this area, this is a zonal process where not so much zonal winds, but the zonal southerlies that are coming up along it in parallel to the cold front that's going to be advancing. Very kind of tricky stuff there. We can see a little bit better at the lower dynamics at the 700 millibar, where the wind barbs are actually being depicted here. And we can look at ads, and this goes out to Anthony Franchi because I know that he asked about some of the low-level jetting that is associated with these cold fronts that advance towards the area. If we look at the NAM 3 kilometer, we can see this only goes out until Sunday at about 1 o'clock a.m. This NAM 3 is a high-resolution model. It only goes out 60 hours, and it stops right there. But you can see that cold front developing right there in the last frames. And just ahead of the front are what we call low-level jets, which are just sort of it's like a forced convergence of surface winds or near surface winds. In fact, we can track that by using ads. And I know that I mentioned to him this is aviation stuff here, but it gives you an idea of what's going on at 3,000 feet and the forecast for 3,000 feet. It'll go any flight level you want, even 6,000 feet. I generally like to use 3,000. And I think the magic number for Tampa to get these winds all the way up to where they need to be at the 3,000 foot level is about 50 knots. So that will ensure enough mixing comes down to get 20 plus knots at the surface. So we're going to be looking for this, and if we run this forward in time, we can see those low-level jets really building across Texas into the Tennessee Valley. And then in time, we get into Saturday. And then we see those low-level jets start to break up a little bit. So this is where it gets really uncertain. And this is why I say don't trust those models just yet, because it looks like this low-level jetting process as we get into Sunday morning is up to about 35 knots over Tampa. But then as we go through the day, it looks like it sort of breaks down a little bit. It's not very clear what's going to be going on that day. Let me go back to that Sunday at 3,000 feet. I think I accidentally bumped the mouse and knocked it out of there. But here's Sunday, and you can see that there's not a very well-defined area of low-level jetting. There's a weak area right here, and then there's a strong area right here, and it really depends on if this low-level jetting process really increases or enhances over the Tampa Bay area to get those winds up into the 20s. So, it's still 3 days out, 4 days. We're looking at getting a better idea as we get into Friday, tomorrow. And even Saturday we'll even have a much better picture. So it's not definite yet, but I'm thinking that the advancement of the cold front shows, a little bit later approach, and a lot of times the timing of these fronts will change, and in fact most times it ends up being backed up a couple of hours. So that would put the increase in the winds into maybe late afternoon and even the evening. So if the timing of the cold front stalls even more, those winds may not even come up until nighttime. So that's why I say be caution. Use caution when you're using the models, looking at everything, because right now, if we look at lasting Tampa Bay cut J and we go out to Sunday, I'm going to select all models here because I like to do that. I like to see what the full model suite's giving. This is what everybody should be doing anyways. But if we look at Sunday, we see there's most agreement for the medium range models, bring it up to 20 knots. And I'm sorry, this is miles per hour, not knots, but we can convert that to knots. It's pretty close. And then even later in the afternoon, we see the WW3 and the GFS really ramping things up towards 30 knots or 30 miles per hour. So there's some agreement right now. It's one of those things you got to say, all right, how much should I believe this right now? We've seen this before. Southerly winds in the winter, they're hard to trust. You're more apt to trusting the north, northwest, or even northeast winds, east, northeast, rather than southerly winds. But this event with that mid-level low developing at that certain latitude, and we talked about this in one of the last videos, that we would really need a mid-level low to really give some more power to that cold front, and it looks like that's going to happen. One thing I'm going to be concerned about, though, is the convective outlook. So we'll have to be watching for the potential for severe storm activity and maybe even the threat for severe weather over the Tampa Bay area. So, I'm talking thunderstorms, waterspouts, possible tornadoes, hail, damaging winds. Some of the storm cells could be fairly destructive, and we've seen this before where we just get you get one single line that rips through, and then the winds switch up right after that, and then that's it. So it just depends on how the front comes along, and it's just too early to tell, especially with the NAM only going out to this far. It looks like that line of storms is really, from what this model is showing, pretty strong coming across the Gulf of Mexico towards the Tampa Bay area, and this could bring up the severe threat for your area significantly. Here's the wind barbs, and another look from the NAM3. This is the same run. It's going out to 60 hours, and you can sort of see that cold front crease coming across the map right here, and the wind barbs coming up. And it doesn't really give a whole lot of guidance on what's going to happen in Tampa at the surface. It still keeps it weak, and that's only out to 60 hours. But either way, I hope that's of some help. The forecast is really muddled. I'm going to say, we're going to keep a southeast regime, southeast to southeast regime through tomorrow. Very light to modest numbers. You might get some low teens peaks in the afternoon due to some of the sea breeze effects, but I think that we won't really see the full potential until we get into Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, when the winds start to become a little bit more southeast to south, and then when we get into Sunday, we see the winds come up even more than that. So that'll do for now. And until tomorrow night, I might come back on and give another wind and weather report. But until then, you guys take care. Thanks a lot for watching, and best of luck if it happens.